Good evening, and thank you all for coming and celebrating 18 years of success at Beis Menachem Youth Development. I need to recognize a few people here this evening. First is my mother, Pauline, who has not been back in town for probably 7 or 8 years. Her significant other was in the hospital last week, and I was not sure if she would make it. Mom, everything that I've become began in the traditional Jewish home that you created and the wonderful holiday atmosphere and spirit that we all enjoyed as kids. It's no wonder Beth hears me singing in the shower on holidays. I also want to recognize my mother-in-law, Bobby Greenbaum. 2 years ago, she suffered a severe stroke. She was in a coma for over a month. Most of us, including the doctors, never thought she would survive. Yet here she is. Truly a modern-day miracle in our midst. You are amazing. And my brother Ron, the Jewish cowboy, who'd have thought? Then there is my never a dull moment wife, Beth. Coming from an extremely reformed background, you would never think Beth and Lori would share anything in common, or even be comfortable in each other's company. They are worlds apart, yet often they sit and talk for hours on end. Beth also spends time with many of the students in a clinical setting, and her comments to me are often, "I love these boys." She has always been supportive and encouraging of my involvement with Beis Menachem and the community, the Chabad community at large. She sees the pleasure I get from my interaction with them. Beth couldn't wait to glow one evening after having an hour conversation with one of the students' fathers, who knew she was not Orthodox. At the end of the conversation, the parent told her that the founder of Chabad taught that when one takes one's own personal time to help another, he or she is rewarded with 1,000 times the success in his or her own endeavors. She couldn't wait to come in the room and say, "Have you ever been blessed by one of the Rebbe's relatives?" I am certain there's a special place in the world to come for helping these young boys find their way in a complex and confusing world. Although I'm being honored this evening, your work with the yeshiva boys is greatly appreciated by the entire Beis Menachem family. There's one more person I need to recognize, and that is Mati Hirschkopf, wherever he is. I have been on nonprofit boards consecutively for over 35 years, and I've never seen someone put their money and their time where their mouth is. He works all day running a huge business and volunteers well into the night most nights. His community needs a place to pray, so he and his father buy a building and renovate it and make it into a beautiful synagogue. He is single-handedly reshaping the local Jewish community and is the only one that has been successful in bringing young families and new life to our town. Beth and I are in awe of you wherever you are. I have a long story to tell, but it's a really good one, and I hope you'll enjoy it. The story is about my father's father, Sam Sirota. My grandfather was born in 1900 at the turn of the century. He was the oldest male of 7 siblings and grew up Orthodox in a village very similar to a scene out of Fiddler on the Roof. When he was 12 years old, his mother passed away of an illness, and his father was killed in a pogrom by the Cossacks. Ironically and coincidentally, in the Russian language, the word for orphan is Sirota. How weird is that? At the age of 13, after a proper bar mitzvah, the family and village somehow raised enough money and bribed the right officials to grant him passage to America. He arrived here in 1913, 13 years old, coming from a remote village in Tashkent, not speaking a word of English, and only a very distant cousin to seek out. Imagine that, 13, traveling alone and not speaking a word of English. It makes our life seem so ordinary and boring. The hope was that somehow he would earn a living and raise enough money to bring his siblings over to the United States. For those of us familiar with history, the Russian Revolution of 1917 ended those dreams for my grandfather and his siblings. Life as an observant Jew was never easy in Russia, but after 1917, things became intolerable. Borders were virtually closed, and religion was replaced by universal atheism. Most of the 5,000 synagogues were closed under Stalin. The practice of Judaism became difficult and risky. Openly being Jewish would land you a first-class ticket to a Siberian prison. If you think I'm exaggerating, at my family table this evening is my cousin Zalman Sirota from Russia, and I'm sure he'd be happy to share stories about his experiences in Siberia, Russian intimidation, and living in fear on a daily basis. Am I exaggerating? So in this environment, the only way to be an observant Jew, which very few chose, was to join the underground movement that was run by the Chabad. Rather than stray from Jewish law, the Sirotas of Russia joined the Chabad movement. It was not until the 1970s that the Soviet Union, under tremendous pressure from the United States, began letting its Jewish population emigrate to the United States and Israel. Skipping ahead a few years. In the summer of 1979, I was 19, it was between my junior and senior year of college, and I was working for my father as a driver. Most days he would give me keys to a car, a lease contract, an address, and a map, and tell me not to be late for dinner. For the young people here, there was no Google Maps or cell phones in those days. One day my father gives me an address, and he tells me I'm to take my grandfather to a wedding in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn, which meant absolutely nothing to me. Since my grandfather never spoke about his childhood or life before America, probably due to the trauma and painful memories he had, I was totally unprepared for what I was about to witness. When we walked into the pre-wedding room, I was certain we made a wrong turn. The room was filled with men in black attire and black hats and beards. What in the world were we doing here? There must be another Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn. As I was planning my exit strategy, I see about 30 men of all ages lining up to greet my grandfather with hugs and kisses and a lot of tears. Feta Shimon, they were crying. Uncle Sam. I looked at my grandfather and he was crying as well. These were his siblings' children and their children. After 66 years, he was reunited with his family. It was a very powerful and emotional moment, and something inside of me was changed forever. I did not become any more or less religious, but something was different. I had discovered that I had Chabad blood in me. Who'd have thought? And not just Chabad blood, but my cousins and great uncles and great aunts are revered in the Chabad world, similar to how we treat our war heroes. If you mention the Sirotas from Russia at a Chabad event, people say, ah, they are the real Chabad. They fought the ultimate fight with dangers lurking that we really can't imagine. After hearing their stories and reading some books where they are mentioned, I often wonder if I would be that brave and courageous to defy the all-powerful Soviet authorities to maintain my Judaism. Since that night in 1979, I've been to many family weddings in Crown Heights with my newfound family, and I've come to appreciate and enjoy the beauty and warmth of Chabad. So 18 years later, Uri comes back to town, and I was immediately drawn to him and his mission without hesitation, without prejudice, or the awkwardness that many non-Hasidic Jews feel in the company of Chabad. I've been involved with Beis Menachem since its inception, and I'm proud to say it's one of its founding fathers. Like many new business ventures, there were some bumps in the road, and there was a learning curve. We tweaked the program where necessary, and it's now one of the fastest growing and most successful schools of its kind with worldwide appeal. Whether it's playing chess with the boys, having them prepare a Shabbos meal for my family, having a Chabad pianist come over to our house for a fundraiser, or simply donating money, my time and my charity to Beis Menachem has been the best investment I've made to date. In one of our many meetings a long time ago in my office, where we often sit and brainstorm about what we're going to do, Ori told me that the sages say that for every dollar that one gives to charity, he or she will receive 2 in return. At the time, I thought it was a pretty slick sales pitch. Over time, I've seen the wisdom of the sages. It seems that every time I donate to Beis Menachem, something very positive happens at my office or in my life, or both. It's happened way too often to be a coincidence. It's easy to sell a product you believe in. It's even easier to sell a product as the best in the industry. Since its inception, it's been a joy to see the positive and dramatic changes in the students that have come through our doors. Their successes are our successes, and Beth and I will proudly continue to solicit, raise awareness, and be a part of the Beis Menachem family. I am humbled and honored to receive this award. I'm merely an advocate, an advisor, and at times a spokesman for Beis Menachem. It's Uri Perlman and his staff and his counselors that are in the trenches, turning around these boys' lives, and in turn making our world a much better place. Thank you very much.